meeting. Go ahead and sit down. Make yourself comfortable, because you're in the hot seat now, girl. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you again also for applying. We really appreciate it. So we're going to have 20 minutes to talk to you. Elaine's going to keep time. And the first 3 minutes, we want you to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to run for this vacancy.
Great. My name's Linsey. I've lived here in Delaware for the past 6 years. My husband grew up here. And when we had children, he was like, we need to go back to my hometown. He loved growing up here, graduated from Delaware Christian, and was very set on raising our children here. I'm from Southern Ohio, so there's no jobs in Southern Ohio. And so while I grew up in a small town, I agreed that Delaware would be a great place to raise a family just because of all of the growth here and all of the potential, especially for kids in this town. So we came here about 6 years ago. My background is my bachelor's degree is in communication, and then my master's studies was rural sociology, community development. I've worked as an intern in economic development for small cities and for larger cities. And then I've also done like community outreach, refugee work in England after 9/11. So even though I haven't worked in government for the last 15 years, it's something that I've always felt very deeply about, and I've always been fairly politically active. And I truly believe all politics are local, and that we make the biggest change by serving our local communities. So I'd just like to have a chance to serve my local community.
Okay, thank you. So the first question is, can you explain to us what a TIF is? T-I-F.
What I'm trying to remember for my economic development is it a tax incremental something district, right? We developed one when I was an intern at Eureka. And how we set it up was to draw in manufacturers within the city limits, and then it was like this graduated tax program to get new industries into the town, and they paid a lower tax rate to begin with, and then it was graduated. The longer they stayed in the town, they got different incentives, but then the tax rates went up. So it was a way to encourage smart development.
Okay, thank you. And then, can you tell us what role does City Council play in the daily operations of the city?
So while the city manager keeps the city running, right?
Smiles.
The city council, their programs and policies are kind of like that operating system. Like if you think of the city like a computer, right? Where, they're writing the code for the operating system, right? You manage the operating system, but they're writing the code for the operating system. So it is the basis and the, that function of every aspect of the city. That's why it's so important that the city council is representative of all parts of the city and all aspects of the residents in the city.
Okay, very good. And then, since this vacancy has been announced, have you had a chance to watch any of our meetings on Facebook?
One, unfortunately, we were just talking in the other room, we're in the middle of a COVID baby boom, and so my business has been incredibly busy right now. We attended 12 births last week, and so unfortunately I was only able to watch one, but I do try to tune in.
From the one that you watched, what stood out most?
I believe there was the discussion about the workforce development that I was trying to follow along with, and then I had to get off because I got called to a birth.
Okay. More important.
Yeah, have to do my job. But.
Okay. Thank you. And at this time, we all have your essay questions. We all have copies of them. So the rest of the questions will come from the council members, and they may want you to elaborate on a question or ask you something. So we're going to start with Lisa this time.
Can you come back to me?
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Hoffman, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
So in your essay, you talk about how rents increased by 8% last year, and that rents generally are rising, and that it's very hard to find apartments for affordable housing, folks that have lower income that can afford a rent. Do you think, given that and some of the difficulties with creating, with finding particularized affordable housing projects with nonprofits and that sort of thing, like Homeport, do you think that situation with increasing rents indicates that we should have more market rate housing in the current circumstances?
I mean, there's a need for housing, period, in Delaware County, right? Like, we just bought a house here in Delaware this year, and it was insane. It was our 16th offer that we put in, and we were getting, we were offering 40,000 over asking, getting outbid left and right. So there's a need for housing in the county and in the city specifically. But when we talk about affordable housing, I helped to open Riverside Landing. And so when you look at like senior affordable housing and you look at affordable housing, especially for young families, it's very limited, especially within the city limits. And so we have a lot of developers knocking at our door wanting to get approved for zoning for these new developments. And so one way that we could approach that affordable housing is to do a lot like larger cities like Chicago and New York do, where we have the set aside requirement. Great, you can build these 400 beautiful new units by the YMCA, and you have to set aside 20% for affordable housing and accept Section 8. Great, you can build this beautiful new housing development, but you have to set aside 10% for market rate housing. That's one way that we could approach it. And that kind of, slides into that workforce development issue too. If we have affordable housing, then we'll have more people that can fill minimum wage and market rate jobs, right? I'm a small business owner, and I know a lot of small business owners in the city, and it's very, very hard for us to find employees.
Do you have anything else?
I'm good.
Lisa, are you ready?
Come back to me.
Okay.
Right.
You have anything? George?
Speaking about affordable senior housing,
Mhm.
what's the downside of? We have several senior housing units, areas within the city. But what's the downside to the city from affordable senior housing? What's the flip side of that?
Are you hinting at the lack of tax income from those units?
I don't know, you tell me.
I mean, from a city standpoint, of course, your affordable senior housing isn't going to be a big tax base, right? That's not a tax gain for the city. But the reality is that these have been our residents for the last 40, 50 years, and they want to either age in place or age near their families. You're going to retain a lot of younger families in the city if they have their parents and grandparents that are close by, and they don't have to take their parents or grandparents to Columbus or Westerville to get assisted living or senior affordable living. I tried to move my parents up here, and there were no affordable units, right? We couldn't get them in anywhere because every place has a 2-year waiting list. So when you have residents like myself who are in that sandwich generation where you have young children and you have parents who are aging and passing, if it's between staying here and working in a beautiful town and in a community that has so much to offer, or being able to take care of your children and your parents, you're going to move to where you can take care of your children and your parents. And we want those young professionals to stay here in Delaware. We don't want a brain drain. We don't want to lose our best and brightest young people. We want our 20 to 50-year-olds to stay here. And one of the ways to do that is to have good senior housing and senior projects and senior programming so that their parents can age in place.
Okay. Follow-up questions?
Absolutely.
Further on down, you talked about workforce development. You
Yeah.
spoke about being a small business owner. It's difficult finding work
It is.
or finding employees. What's the flip side of that? Why is it hard to find employees?
So,
You're talking about minimum wage. You speak specifically minimum wage jobs.
I mean, I don't. My job, the jobs that I fill for pay $25 to $50 an hour, it's still hard for me to find reliable employees that are willing to work on call, right? But the small business owners I know in town, it's hard to find servers, it's hard to find busboys. A lot of our teens, they don't want to work in food service, they're going down to the zoo and they can make $12 an hour, right? We can't staff our lifeguards at the pool because they can make more down in Columbus. So either we have to address that as a city by raising the minimum wage in the city and then looking at how do we offset that cost for businesses, for small businesses, right? Or we have to have more affordable housing so we have more people who are willing to work at those rates. You can't magic up employees if they don't already live here. You either have to meet the need of the income that is required, or you have to draw in residents that meet that financial need and that unskilled labor requirement.
One more.
Go ahead.
Affordable housing, just from your perspective,
Yes.
what is an affordable housing rent?
So the standard is that it's 30 to 40% of your monthly income is what's considered affordable housing.
Okay, but we're talking affordable housing, workforce, non-skilled labor, minimum wage jobs, so give me a number.
So when you look at Section 8, it's typically their commitment per month is usually between $200 and $800 a month that they're required to pay out of, it's done on like a sliding scale where they qualify per income. So we don't have, I can't think of a single apartment complex in the city other than those that accept Section 8 that are under $800 a month. We just don't have anything available.
Thank you.
Mr. Farrell?
Just a quick one to end. If I can find where I wrote it. There it is. So you talked a little bit about infrastructure and things that would develop like the riverfront.
Mhm.
What do you see as important in the next 5 years versus 20 years down the road for infrastructure?
I feel like infrastructure right now, we have to meet the needs of the residents that are here. So obviously roads are important beyond roads and, sewer systems and water systems, especially making sure we have adequate service to all of these new housing developments that are going in where it's not a greater strain on what we already have. Our parks system it's good, but it could be way better. And then we need to have long-term plans, 10 and 20 years, and that's where I think the riverfront development comes in, because we are directly competing with suburbs like Gahanna and Dublin and New Albany, and they've gone ahead with those riverfront developments and those mixed-use developments where we don't have those. And so when you're looking at your young professionals and you're trying to draw in more residents, that would be a higher tax base. They're going to be drawn to areas where they can get healthcare, have a night out, have childcare, and be able to walk around downtown on a riverfront all in one place, as opposed to here where we may have to go out on the west side, up on the north side, down to Polaris to access all of our services.
Thank you. Mrs. Geller?
I don't have anything.
You don't have anything? That's okay. All right, well, thank you very much. Kim will come back and get you as soon as Elaine texts him, so thank you.